What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Flight. Flight is directed by Robert Zemeckis, who has of course brought us things like the Back to the Future trilogy, Romancing the Stone, Forrest Gump, and so many others, and is written by John Gattens, who's also written things like Real Steel, Kong Skull Island, Power Rangers 2017, and of course many others, and has a cast with people like Denzel Washington, Don Cheadle, and John Goodman. Now, before I get too far into this, I have to say a big thanks to my guest for this video, and that is Trav from TravTries. It's been quite some time since I've had my buddy here on the channel, and this is a very special collab because about over a year ago at this point, Trav hit me up and said, hey man, just randomly, have you ever seen the movie Flight with Denzel Washington? And the poster was something I felt like I always remembered. I remember seeing it come out. I just never got around to it. This is one of those movies that I always heard of, but it slipped through the cracks. And it's also a movie I just never hear really spoken about these days, so it was interesting to see the fact that Trav was actually hitting me up and saying, hey, this is actually a really good movie, I'd love to see you review this at some point. And so a few months down the line, even from that, randomly one day I get home and yeah, I had a package. I forgot that Trav had asked me at one point what my address was, and I figured he was going to send me something when he asked, but I didn't know that he was going to be sending me a Blu-ray copy of Flight. So a big thanks to him. He knows I'm really big into physical media and having a movie collection, so despite my feelings on any movie, I'm always happy to have a movie in my collection, whether it's a great one, a mediocre one, a guilty pleasure, whatever the case may be. So again, a big thanks to Trav for that and inspiring this collab. I told him after he sent me that, I was like, well, then we have to absolutely do this collab together. So a big thanks to Trav for sending me this copy and yeah, making this video possible. This is an interesting one because this is a movie, like I said, I'd never seen before, and on a lot of levels I enjoy this film, but I have to be honest when I say I don't think I love this film. This is a movie that has a lot of really great performances and has a very compelling and, I guess, really intriguing element to the whole movie. I was constantly very intrigued to see where things were going to go, but it is a little bit of a slow burn, and though I enjoyed what they kind of did with that, I think sometimes it was a little bit too slow, maybe a little bit too long for what it actually was, and I definitely have a lot I want to say on this, but the first thing I want to talk about is what this movie is based on. We center on Denzel Washington's character, who ends up saving majority of the people on this plane right as it's about to crash because of a malfunction in the plane itself. However, he was under the influence of cocaine and alcohol, and even though he does end up inverting this plane, leveling it out by making it go upside down, he ends up saving most of these people. Even though he does save all of these people, there is a huge legal element that comes into play afterwards when they do find obviously stuff in his bloodstream from a toxicology report. So at the core of this movie is a story of a man having to lie his way through a lot of things to try to continually be viewed as the hero, when in fact he was under the influence. And though he saved the day, could he have done better had he not been under the influence? But what's weird about this movie for me is that the real life story is about Alaska Airlines 261 back in January of 2000, where somebody who was under the influence of cocaine and alcohol, the pilot, somebody actually tried to do this when their plane was malfunctioning. He flipped the plane upside down and ended up crashing, and everybody died. It was a tragedy that this movie is based on, and that element alone was a little bit strange to me, I can't lie. I was a little bit taken back to find out that this whole premise of this movie, even though this man is looked at as like a hero and deals with this legal battle throughout the course of the film, it was strange to know that this movie was based on a true tragedy. Yeah, so that was a little bit strange to me. As a movie on its own, I do find it to be a really well acted film. I really enjoyed the performances throughout. Again, I was intrigued consistently, but I will say I found it to be a little bit slower than I would have liked it to have been. And I have more I want to talk about, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw it to my buddy Trav, who sent me a copy of this movie to check it out, and let's go ahead and hear his thoughts on the movie.
So Mr. Perez has asked me to be on again. A long overdue collab that we've been planning for a really long time, at least over a year. A lot of procrastination on my side for sure, but this is a movie that I do believe I sent to him on Blu-ray. I also just recently got it from my buddy Dustin, so shout out to Dustin. He he's, as of right now, he's watching the movie, and I don't know his thoughts yet, but on this recent viewing, I was inspired to send it to Dustin because I told him, like, I just think that this movie is just not talked about enough, and honestly is currently my favorite Denzel Washington-led film. And I know what you're thinking with that, because Denzel has such a wide, scope. Like, he's done so many movies, but there's something about Robert Zemeckis' Flight, starring Denzel Washington, that his performance as Whip Whitaker, like, I don't know, there's something so real about it. This is one of those movies that anytime me and my friends are talking about films or going on and on, if I can think about it in the moment, I'll bring up Flight. Like, I'll be like, have you seen Flight? And when Dustin hadn't seen it, I was like, got it coming to you. And just because I'm recommending it, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a perfect film. I don't really think so, but it's pretty close. I really, really love this movie. You're locked in from beginning to end, and I think that is the good recipe that this movie is. Denzel plays a pilot that ends up pulling this insane move with a plane, and like that entire sequence from the beginning of the movie all the way to the plane sequence and the ending of the plane sequence, there is so much, like, every time I've seen it, even though I know what's happening, it's a rush. Like, I'm nervous. The way they build up to it, the shots they do in the cockpit, really making you feel like you're there with them on the plane. And I recently have flown to go to this festival last year, at the end of last year, and rewatching this movie again after recently flying, after not flying after like 10 years, and I just had that feeling in my stomach, like when the planes change altitude or whatever, and I feel like my body's kind of sensitive to it. Like, I feel like I'm not like one of those, like, I'm gonna throw up easy kind of people or whatever, but that it's weird. It's jarring to, like, and so I can't even imagine this kind of tragedy happening in a plane. There's just something so scary about being in this metal tube up in the sky. And so basically, without spoiling it, Denzel Washington's character has a lot to deal with in this movie. He has something he has to face because of some bad decisions he has made, and I love that. I love how human the movie is, and never expected to see Don Cheadle in this. He's great. I mean, he actually plays a really good attorney. Like, I do believe that's technically what he was, an attorney. His name is like Hugh in the movie, and me and Ashley literally just made fun of that upon this rewatch. I was like, no, that's the attorney Don Cheadle. That I can't imagine his name being Hugh. Like, I still, when he's War Machine in the MCU, I still look at him as Don Cheadle, but that's not to say that he is the same character in everything. He's not. This is probably one of the more different characters, really, that I've seen. I've never been an alcoholic or a drug addict in any way, but I feel like this movie, Denzel Washington does so good at representing that kind of abuse on yourself. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to it. There are some feels and emotions, and especially on the end. I'm not saying this is one of those movies that's going to make you cry the whole time, but I appreciate the message that this movie has, at least by the end. Like, the whole movie throughout, but it definitely touches on some subjects. I can't stop reviewing this without talking about John Goodman's character. Every time he's on screen, I love it. It's just, he's so funny. I think that this is a very real character. Like, I feel like we all know somebody that acts like this, and I'm not going to spoil much about that because I want you guys to see it and I want you guys to be surprised. I would actually have loved for him to be in it more, but I do understand that it wouldn't have served the story. I don't think it would have served the story for him to be in the movie too much, but where he is in the movie, it's hysterical. It's some of the best parts of the film because the movie knows how to be dramatic, but it has its funny moments. I hope you guys, especially those of you not seen Flight, please treat yourself. I don't know if it's on Hulu anymore. I know that it was recently, It doesn't really, it's not really known to be on streaming services that much, but I think it's been on Netflix once or twice. But if you want to spend the money to just like rent it for like $3 on YouTube, it's worth it. I think you guys will really love it. This was the big one. Like, this was a movie I've wanted me and Anthony to talk about forever, because I just don't think people talk about it enough. I never hear anybody talking about this. It's like one of the most underrated Denzel Washington movies. I love movies like this. I love stories like this. People that have issues and they want to fix them, but they keep falling back, and just, you know, under this event that he goes through, it's beautifully done from beginning to end. Like, it's shot beautiful. It looks great on Blu-ray. It's just one of those movies, well, while you're watching it, you're really immersed into this world. Like, it's the real world, it's real life, but you're kind of just, you're in it from beginning to end. And it is a fairly longer movie, but I still feel like if it was still going for another 30 minutes to an hour, I'd still be invested in it. I love Flight. I think it's super underrated, and I hope more people check it out. But thank you to everyone that has viewed my segment here. I'm going to pass it back to Anthony, the king himself of the channel. I hope that you guys have a beautiful day, and you'll be seeing me next time.
A big thanks to Trav for joining me here in this video. Again, my friend, thank you so much for sending me a copy of this and helping add this to my collection of movies. Yeah, you know, you definitely enjoyed this film a lot more than me, but I could totally understand where you're coming from and what you enjoy about this film. Despite what I was mentioning earlier about the true life events that this is based on, I did find it to be a well-made film. You know, I was definitely engaged, but I watched it with my fiance and she found herself a little bored while we were watching, so I could totally see this being a movie that doesn't work for everybody. It is a bit of a slow burn throughout, and I think where I struggled the most with this movie is that Denzel Washington's character, again, is being painted as this hero for saving the day. And, you know, I would agree, he saved the day. Now, of course, he should not have been under the influence, and, you know, he probably could have performed far better and saved more people's lives had he not. But then the movie presents it in a way that, despite his alcoholism and despite his drug use, he was the hero because of how good he is. And so they kind of want you to get on his side in a way, but then I think the rest of the movie is really us just seeing this man slowly having to realize that the way he's been is not going to work anymore. His lies are not going to work anymore. And at the end, we see a person who has kind of come full circle and, you know, decided to fess up and recognize his fault and try to better himself and try to better others afterwards. And on that level, I really enjoyed that tale. But I think my struggle with his journey is that it's one of those movies where you really struggle to relate with the lead star or the lead character, in my opinion. It's one of those movies where the character is consistently making these decisions that make you just facepalm, and there are so many moments where you feel like he could have had more growth than he actually did. And since this isn't based on an actual true story that happened, you know, this is kind of like a what if. I think there's certainly an element of this movie that makes me feel like I wish that I had just felt a little more growth from his character throughout. I think the movie is a little overly long for how many scenes that we have that he relapses or gives people trouble or chooses to continue to lie and, you know, will show up to the next thing that's going to benefit him and help him, but ends up getting intoxicated, you know, and just kind of ruining the moment instead. And so since there's so much of that throughout the course of the runtime, by the time we get to the end, I just felt like they could have done a little bit more or trimmed a little bit out to not really necessarily focus so much on those scenes. Because at a certain point, I feel like it was like, okay, we get it. You know, like this dude is showing up to everything just blasted and wasted. And sure, you do kind of have, you know, a little bit of a happy ending with, you know, how he chooses to change at the end. But it feels like a little bit too little too late, to be completely honest, by the time we get there, if I'm completely and utterly honest. I just felt like throughout the course of the film, he was such a dirtbag for such a big part of the runtime without a lot of growth, that when he does have that, you know, moment at the end where he decides to fess up, I just felt like they could have been at least trickling in a little more growth throughout. And I just felt like a lot of times when you felt he was having growth, he kind of reverted. And I think in a lot of ways it's realistic to real life, but as a story, I found it to just be a little bit slower than I would have liked to have seen it. But I do feel like this is a really well-made film. You know, I found the score to be good. I enjoyed the cinematography. The direction from Robert Zemeckis is good. But yeah, this is not a movie I can see myself running to rewatch. I feel like this is one you definitely have to be in the mood to watch. But I'm definitely curious to hear what people have to say about it. Do you agree with Trav? Do you like it as much as he does? Or do you feel a little bit more like with me? Or maybe you don't like this movie at all? I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Please hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. Comment your thoughts on this movie, this collab, your thoughts on whatever. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.